it's kind of like, it's almost like coming into a math class, like the third class in or something. You know, I don't mean to make it sound boring, but just a lot of different names, a lot of terminology, a lot of lists and stuff to remember. Don't worry, just try to open your mind and let it sink in. And it's just like learning anything, a language or anything that just requires familiarity. That's how we learn asanas, right? It's all about just hearing it, thinking about it, meditating on it, and it starts to take root within you. So just practice like that, and everything will be fine. You'll get it, right? Anybody who wants to follow along with the chanting we do at the beginning, you can. It's in the front of your book. If you don't have it, you can just, if you know it, you can sing it along. If nobody feels comfortable with that, I'll do it by myself. You could just think about the meaning. The first is offering the mandala, right? So if you want to do the mudra, you can do it. And if not, you can do this. This is simple, or you can just do no mudra. It's really about what we're doing with our mind. It always comes back to that, right? It's like, we could speak Tibetan perfectly, we could wear mala beads, we could, have a perfect downward facing dog, but what's really going on in the inside is what we're trying to get at. So what we're doing is offering a purified world, a perfect environment, you can even offer your mind to be available to develop into a perfected mind, a Buddha's mind, an awakened mind, a totally open and wise mind, and a totally loving heart. Sashi Puki Jukshing Metok Cham Rirab Lingshin Yende Genpadi Sangye Shingdu Mikte Uwagi Jokun Namdak Shingla Chupasho Idam Guru Ratnam Mandakam Niryatayami. And then the refuge prayer. Sangye Chudang Soki Choknam La Jangchu Badu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Chunyen Gipe Sunamki Jola Penshir Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chudang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Daki Chunyen Gipe Sunamki Jola Penshir Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chudang Soki Choknam La Jangchu Badu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Chunyen Gipe Sunamki Jola Penshir Sangye Drupa Sho. So in your mind, go for refuge, which all that means is go for protection, not in something else or someone else, but in your own wisdom and in your own compassion, because that's where protection comes from, in your own understanding. And through your own understanding, a modification of your behavior, of thought, of word, of action. So once we gain wisdom, we don't do the things or say the things or think the things that causes pain anymore. And that's protection. We'll do a quick meditation. You can count 7 rounds of breath, starting with the out breath, and then the in breath counts as 1. So out, in, 1, out, in, 2, and so on. in front of you, close to you, facing you. Your perfect vision of what an enlightened person is. If you have a personal teacher in your life, you can visualize them, but not just as some guy or some woman. Think of them as the embodiment of enlightenment. Think of them as an enlightened being. Shine them up in your mind. See that they're totally loving and try to feel that. And that they're totally wise. Take a moment to reflect on any other positive qualities they have. Next, you make some kind of offering. And all this means is you can offer in 3 different ways. Physical things, and you can do all 3 if you want. Nice food, flowers, something you know that they would like. Even though enlightened beings can enjoy anything. Anything brings them happiness. You can make offerings of something that nobody owns, like the leaves changing, the beautiful colors, the cool air, and the moonlight, or the river, or the universe like we just did, purified universe. And finally, the most important, the highest kind of offering is your practice of what they teach you or what they represent, your practice of the path to reach the state that they have attained. And it doesn't have to be, if you don't consider yourself a Buddhist necessarily, offer your practice of morality or offer your coming here at all. Offer your pure intention. Offer your compassion. And of course, the very happy. Next, think of some negativity in the last 24 hours or so, or 48 hours, of your thoughts or words or your conduct physically. Something that, based on what you've learned, you know will bring harm to you at some point in the future. Even if it's just a little thing. And you just share that with this being, and it's not like, don't think of it as like a guilt thing. We're trying to clear our conscience for what we're about to do in class. And you could just have some understanding of karma and emptiness, like we've been talking about. The fact that what we think or say or do produce produces results that we experience later. You can have some healthy regret, which just means that we understand it's negative and therefore we regret it. Like if we drank a toxic thing, we wouldn't be like, I'm so bad, I'm such a bad person. We would just say, that was dumb, I drank poison. So just think of it like that. Make a commitment in your mind to not do that thing for a set amount of time, but make sure it's something that you can accomplish. If not, it just makes more negativity. So if you can do it for the next 5 minutes or till the end of class or for the rest of the evening, commit to that. If not, something shorter, something more manageable, even if it's just the space of one breath. And finally, think of some positive thing you can do to balance out the negativity. So some positive thing that's related. So if you said something harsh, maybe you can make an effort to speak kindly to anyone, and it doesn't even have to be that person. It could be. But remember that karma is created by what we observe ourselves thinking or speaking or doing. So it's flexible in how we work that. And then just imagine that this is cleared from your mind and try to really get convicted in that it's done. If you did these steps well, it should be done. And if you don't feel like it's done, you can do this meditation at home. And next we're going to think of some positive thing of thought or word or action that we did in the past 24 or 48 hours, or you can think of multiple things. And you're going to share them with this being in front of you and just rejoice together. And don't hold back at all. Let yourself feel really happy. Ask this teacher to please keep teaching you. And remember that it doesn't have to come in the form of a class or a book or a podcast, but it could come as anything or anyone if you open your mind to it. So make an aspiration now to stay open for the teaching when it comes. It might even be somebody irritating you. It might be your children or your spouse. So ask for the teaching and then say in your mind, I'll stay open to it. I'll stay available for it. Whatever it may be. And then ask them to stay with you, stay close to you, not to go far, but to keep guiding you, to help you achieve your deepest goals, most important goals, to help you gain realization of the three principal paths and reach the enlightened state, reach the mind and body that they have developed. Of course, they happily agree to that. And then see them start to emit light with their body. Their body is illuminated, and they start to rise into the air in front of you and float over the top of your head, and they turn to face the same direction as you. And now they shrink down in size, smaller and smaller and smaller, to maybe about the size of your thumbnail. And they're just pouring light down through the crown of your head into your body, blessing your mind, helping you. And then they move down through the crown of your head, down along the front of your spine, where they rest in your heart. And it's a beautiful room, the cushion. And they stay there and meditate until you ask them to come again. And then dedicate in your mind that all of the efforts you've made just now and that you will make tonight and throughout the rest of your life will benefit the countless living beings that exist. That anything with a mind is in the same situation as any of us. That ultimately, on the deepest level, they're experiencing suffering, they're experiencing pain, the ups and downs of samsaric existence. And the purpose of this class and the Dharma, the teachings, is to help us reach a state that is no longer suffering, so that at its highest level, so that we can help everybody else. We can be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Thanks everybody for coming. Anybody studied? Okay, you ready for the quiz? We'll take 10, 15 minutes tops for the quiz, and then we'll get going with class 3. Okay, don't sweat it. Don't do quiz 1, right? Because I already gave you the answers to that last time. Are you doing it? No. Okay. And remember, like, you want to see it? Don't sweat it. It's really just for your own knowledge. But it's a good exercise, and you can treat it like a challenge. You want one? Yeah, don't do one, just two. It's on the next pages. Okay. can even offer you one, Rachel. There's a box up there if you wanted to just take one and look at it, or if you wanted to do it on your own, help yourself. Up there, yeah. I just figured since you didn't come to the first two, it might be confusing, but. And you can pass them to Georgie. Yeah, she volunteered to grade them. So. There's a spot, or if you want to sit, if you don't mind this big vacant spot right here, that's a good one too. Just a brief thing. Oh, sorry, Steve's still going.
Sure.
Not so bad, right? They're pretty easy. Sorry, I didn't mean to think so. Just a brief talk about the meditation we did. That's traditional to do before your actual meditation. It's called the 7-limb practice for eliminating obstacles and increasing positive energy. I'm sure there's a shorter way of naming it than that, but that's how I remember it. You could just call it the preliminaries, but anyway, you do that before whatever other meditation you're doing, typically. So, and it helps to get your mind in the right state for whatever you're going to go later, especially if you have something hanging on your mind. It's really good to feel like it's purified. And the steps for the purification part that we did in that meditation are called the 4 powers. Somebody had asked last class about how to clean negative karma, right? If we're trying to achieve this enlightenment, but we have limitless negative karma from limitless lifetimes, we better know how to shift that. And this is the meditation for it, the 4 powers. If you forgot or you want to talk more about that, or I can email the group written out instructions for that. And then another thing is important, and I tried to say it in the meditation, but do the rejoicing equally powerfully. It's something that we're really not used to. It's so easy to be like, oh, I did all these horrible things. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I find myself really lingering in I really need to purify all this stuff. And then when it's like, think of something good, it's like, yeah, so it wasn't that good. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why. It's kind of perverse. It's I guess it's samsara, right? But try to get into it. As much as you did the purifying, try to feel uplifted genuinely. And sometimes if you do it really well, you can feel very emotional. And I think, I always feel like, great, I did it. I've succeeded when I feel like you almost well up with joy. And it doesn't have to be just your own goodness. You can also think about all your friends here, everybody who's coming, or just good people in the world, you know? Just think about people who actually care about other people and are expressing that with their actions and with their words in the world, and that we live in a world where there are still people like that. You know, that we're not in an environment where all people can think about is how to cleverly blow somebody else up. You know what I mean? That there are people who actually care about doing good and care about spiritual things. And so think about that and really let your mind revel in it for that part. Anyway, that's that. Tonight, the entire class is about the importance. Well, I'm not going to tell you. If you're going to learn anything, what do you suppose would be an indispensable thing? What do you absolutely need if you're going to learn anything whatsoever?
Good teacher.
Yeah, Yeah, and this is not promo for myself. I'm just saying this is the class, and I didn't write it. But you need somebody to not only explain it, but also help guide you personally. And I think that they're talking about both aspects maybe tonight. But there are different kinds of teachers for different things. But for lack of a better word, they're talking about a guru. And that's a scary word for us here in the West because we've had a lot of gurus gone wrong, as my teacher likes to describe it, especially the 60s and 70s, all the scandals, right? And I'm not saying that those people didn't do irresponsible things, but I think a lot of the guru gone wrong was also the guru-student relationship gone wrong, understanding it wrongly, not being instructed on how it's supposed to go or what are the qualities of a qualified teacher, and then how to relate to them once you have established that pact with somebody. What are we supposed to do? Does that mean I'm just check my intellect at the door and do whatever they say? Obviously not, but some people make that mistake, so I think it's an important thing to talk about. Really, this class focuses on the qualities of specifically a Buddhist teacher or a spiritual teacher, but we can consider anybody who's taught us a single letter of the alphabet our guru, our teacher, our parents, right, are our first gurus. We wouldn't have the tools to even sit here through this class and understand it without the kindness of our parents. And despite what kind of relationship you have with your parents, we can at least thank them for that. And also they say in these teachings, thank them for our body. And we have a human body. And we didn't talk about the different levels of rebirth in this system, but we have a very fortunate setup here. Even though we're suffering, we enumerated all the sufferings of samsaric existence, of cyclic life. We got one of the best deals in the whole circle. Why is that? Because we have the perfect balance of pain and rest from pain, or happy things, right? We're not so overcome by ignorance or pain all the time that we have no capacity to practice. And we're not so high on the hog that we have no interest in practice. They say that there are beings, and you can actually see all the different realms within this realm, but supposedly there are different realms of rebirth. And one of them are these kind of divine, godly realms where everything is just always pleasant. You get all the best food, and nothing ever goes wrong until the end. And because it doesn't mean you're enlightened, you just get pleasurable experiences all the time. Such a continuous stream of pleasurable experiences that we never get inspired to do any kind of practice, to make any kind of effort. And I always think about movie stars, for so much of their life, and no offense to movie stars, and not all of them are like this, but they have these such extravagant lives. They're so beautiful. They're the epitome of beauty, and then they start to decline, right? And there's a special kind of suffering when they start to feel their hold at the top slipping, right? And then they start taking commercial jobs, and then they, and then it's just like it goes downhill. But anyway, point being, we're not like that. We have the perfect balance. We're kind of middle of the road. We have the inspiration to come here and be like this. So we're lucky, and we can thank the fact that we have that to our parents. Right? Our body comes from their parts of their body. So those are like our first gurus. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about what to look for in a qualified Dharma teacher or a qualified teacher of Buddhism, same thing. And this comes from the Sutra Alamkara by Asanga. You don't have to write this down, but Asanga was an Indian master who is said to have visions of the enlightened being Maitreya, and he wrote, just like Tsongkhapa, wrote a lot of books that were supposedly dictations, right, from this enlightened being. So when you go look it up in the library, it says it was this guy Asanga who wrote it, but within the oral tradition of this lineage, it said that he meditated he meditated for a long time until he finally had a vision. He met Maitreya face to face, and then he taught him all kinds of things, and he wrote lots of books on it. Okay, first quality. We'll do the Tibetan and English. It's not the point that you have to learn to speak Tibetan. I don't speak Tibetan, But it's a special kindness, I feel, to the Tibetan people who have preserved this so nicely to learn a little bit of their language. And down the road, you'll find that you'll hear Tibetan words and they'll click and you'll know what it means. All right, so the first one is Shiwa. Sorry, Duwa. D-U-L-W-A. And this literally means tame. Anybody want to take a guess at what that means? What does it mean for somebody to be tame in this context?
Maybe like non-emotionally turbulent.
Not necessarily that, but I suppose that would be a result of the tame in the sense that we're talking about.
Humble?
I think these are probably all qualities that would result from tame. I'll just tell you, it relates specifically to the first of what they call the 3 trainings. You don't have to write that down, but you can if you want. The 3 higher trainings or extraordinary trainings. First of them being ethical discipline. So in Buddhism, they refer to strong ethics, an ethical code, living by an ethical discipline as being tame. They liken it to, you have a horse who's wild, right? And then you rope it to the thing, and eventually it calms down and becomes tame, it becomes pacified. And it's the same thing by following the Buddhist discipline, the Vinaya, or the vows of morality. So somebody who has vows and is keeping their vows well, living an ethical way of life very well. Okay. Next one, bless you. Shiwa, S-H-I-W-A. Before we go on to Shiwa, just a few more things. I don't feel like I emphasized it enough. Ethics, ethical discipline, you can't have anything else without that. It's the absolute root of all of this practice. If we're supposed to evolve into a being that has legitimate and sincere care for every other being, how could that being also be somebody who's lying, who's stealing, who's cheating on their, whatever? It can't be. It's an oxymoron. They don't connect. It doesn't line up. And how could we possibly, in the context of a teacher, how could we possibly expect to gain that ourself, that tameness, if they themselves are not tame, right? It'd be like, again, the brain surgeon who has never learned about brain surgery. I read some books and I heard about it. I can't do it, but why don't I teach you how? It's silly because it doesn't make sense. So we're going to talk about these 10, but I'd say, later we'll say, that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that for right now. Okay, Shiwa means they're at peace. This relates to the second of the 3 extraordinary or 3 higher trainings. This means, it'll say in your answer key, they have achieved a high degree of extraordinary training in meditative concentration. Okay? Write that down, but then we're going to talk about what exactly that means. Now, yes, it's important that we develop single-pointedness. We haven't gotten into that very much, but the ability to concentrate on one object for any length of time while maintaining the brightness of your mind, while not getting dull or not getting distracted. It's called a level called shamatha. But they're not actually referring to that specifically, even though what I just told you to write down would imply that. The peacefulness or the concentration that they're specifically referring to in the relationship to the teacher is they have awareness, they have presence of mind to not break their morality. So they're aware all the time of how they're conducting themselves. They're not like, oh yeah, I took these vows, I forgot, I just lied, or whatever. Or if they do, they're recognizing it, very quickly and purifying it. But really, they should have the presence of mind to not be breaking their morality and concentration in that regard. So whatever's coming up or whatever situation they find themselves in, when they could possibly do it, they don't, because they have that level of concentration. Almost like mindfulness. Okay, number 3, Nyer Shiwa, N-Y-E-R, and then new word Shiwa, same as the past, the last one. And this means they should be a person who has high peace, or they're very peaceful, meaning they practice the extraordinary training of wisdom to a high degree. So, wisdom relates to the third principal path that we talked about, right? Understanding reality. Some examples, right? Some basic ones. Understanding, for instance, you can consider it wisdom that living an ethical way of life is a good idea. That it's smart. It's a kind of spiritual smarts to say, I think it'd actually be really good to take some vows and live my life by them, because that would bring about a positive result. Or understanding the teachings on, especially this relates to understanding the teachings on emptiness, like we talked about the last couple classes, on the nature of reality. So they have a strong training in that and a strong understanding of that, but wisdom in a more general sense. Okay. Okay, another thing about this one. They have the training in wisdom, and this specifically relates to their use of concentration, their meditation, to examine wisdom. So it says here, they use their special concentration, or shamatha, that single point in meditation, to investigate reality. So they've meditated on the nature of reality, and they use specifically their concentration to think about reality and gain wisdom that way. So sorry if that was unclear. That's sort of the essence of the quality number 3. All right, number 4, Yunten, Y-U-N-T-E-N, new word, Hlakpa, H-L-A-K-P-A.
Can you repeat the first one?
Yeah, Yunten, Y-U-N-T-E-N, and then Hlakpa, H-L-A-K-P-A. So the first 3 were related to the 3 extraordinary trainings, right? Now we're breaking off of that. So we talked about we need the teacher, and we need a teacher who knows something. But what if the teacher is somebody who knows less than us, or knows the same? We're not going to... It's like... any musicians in the room? No, sorry, I can't use my music example. Any athletes? Tennis players? Yeah, you can't play tennis with the worst person if you want to get better, right? You have to play with somebody who's always a little bit ahead, and that raises your game. If you play with somebody who's the same as you all the time, you kind of stay middle of the road, and you play with somebody worse, it's just like you're crushing them all the time, and what do you gain from that? So the fourth one is they should have spiritual qualities which exceed those of the student, so they can help them, right? If you want to learn to master something, you have to find a master, or you have to find somebody who at least knows more than us, right? Okay. Number 5. So we'll list them like this, and then we can ask questions and talk about it more. I think we'll get through these actually pretty quickly. Number 5, Tsunche, Tsunche, which means effort. Hi. Oh wait, that's right. So they work very hard, for one. That's part of this. They're always making efforts to teach their students. But really, it means specifically that they take joy in the effort. Right? It's not like a drag for them, or they're not doing it because, they think it's cool or something like that. They take absolute joy in teaching their students for the benefit of their students. So they have a kind of joyful effort, and that's specifically what it means. Joyful effort in teaching their students. And they're kind of, if we want to view this teacher as an enlightened being like we did in the meditation, they're just reflecting those qualities. Wouldn't an enlightened being have those qualities? So the teacher should be at least making an example of some of them. All right. 6th one, right? Lungi chuk, 3 words. Lung, like lung, like your lung. L-U-N-G. And then second word, G-I. Then C-H-U-K. So it's not enough for them to just know stuff, right? Because a lot of people know stuff internally, but maybe they can't back it up, or they can't point to it and say, here's the source, I didn't just make it up. So this one is, they're rich in scriptural knowledge. They have a lot of understanding of the books and the lineage of teachings that have been written down in past. They can cite them, they know where things come from, they give examples. I think I said it already, but this one to me has a lot to do with their validity, their upholding of the thread that comes from the Buddha, right? These are Buddhist teachings, but Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago, so how do we know it's being maintained? A lot of these books that are being cited are 1,000 years old, or more. So somebody who can say, I learned it from this book, and this is a commentary on that book, that came from this teacher, whose teacher was this and that. It shows the validity for one thing, and it's also good to hear those original words. So somebody who can guide us through that process of learning the books, that's one of the qualities. And also learning that ourselves helps us pass it on and helps us teach our own students if we eventually become teachers. All right, this one, next one, is called Denyi, D-E-N-Y-I, Denyi. Second word, Rabtok, R-A-B-T-O-K. And this means they have a deep realization of emptiness. It says suchness in your homework. If you get confused, that's just another word for emptiness.
What was the word again?
The Tibetan, Daenyi, so DE-NYI, and then new word RABTOK. So what does it mean to have a deep realization of suchness? This is really important, and how do we know that somebody has had that? Ideally, somebody who's had the meditative experience of seeing it directly, like we talked about last time, that pivotal spiritual milestone that on the Buddhist path we all need to go through in order to achieve enlightenment, where in deep meditation, that single-pointed concentration, that shamatha, we have an experience that the things that we thought were there, or the things that we thought existed in a certain way, don't exist that way. We see the voidness, the absence of self-existence to things directly. And then after that, we're completely changed. You can't go back from that experience. It's like, you can't unknow it, right? It's like you're on your way after that. And so ideally we find somebody like that. The trick is, traditionally, nobody will ever say that that's happened to them, and even if you ask sometimes, and it's just not how it's not the conduct of those people to talk about that experience. Partially because they say it can't be described, it can't be named, it can't be limited by words. There are teachings where they give all kinds of metaphors on what it's like, but you can't just be like, I'll draw you a picture, or you can't. It's supposedly non-conceptual, which how do we even conceptualize what non-conceptual would be? But a yogic perception, almost like sometimes you hear it described as emerging, or they say like water being poured into water, or like all the rivers of the ocean, all the rivers flowing into the ocean, or our mind is absorbed in nothing other than ultimate reality, to the nature of things. Anyway, at the very least, they should have an excellent understanding of emptiness intellectually. If they haven't had that experience, they can at least be very knowledgeable intellectually about emptiness and be able to explain it well and know all the facets of the different schools that have taught about emptiness, the different ideas, and be able to explain that to their students. But also have realization, some kind of realization of it. Okay, this is number 8, right? Make, spelled like make in English, M-A-K-E. And then second word, den, D-E-N, make den. This means that they should be a good teacher. They should be a master instructor, it says in the homework. Which might seem very obvious given all the things we've just listed, but it pertains specifically to their ability to teach students. So, you ever meet those people who are really good at something and you're like, hey man, how do you do that? They're like, I don't know. I just do. I used to have all these musician friends like that. Like, can you show me? Can you explain that? I don't know, man. I just do it. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of annoying. You need somebody who is very sensitive to all the different levels of people coming to the material and knows exactly what's appropriate to give to different people, different strokes for different folks. It's kind of like a juggler. This person it might be appropriate for them to get this, or what is the level, and that teacher can engage at the level of the student that's right for them, not too high, not too low, and then help guide them through those stages in a very skillful way, right? They use a kind of, it's a special skill that they have to be able to do that. Did you want to say something about that? Oh, okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think I said it. They know the student's capacity and they know what would be good for that level, right? You can't go to a graduate level class. It would be unkind of a teacher to just blah 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 all their knowledge at you you were nowhere near being able to understand that. They have to guide you along, just like a child. You know, you don't put them in front of calculus when they're 2 years old. All right, number 9. Tseway dakni. Tseway. And then daknyi. They should be the image of love, which means they teach out of love for their students and not for any worldly motives. So they're not teaching to have people pay them respect, to give them stuff. They shouldn't expect anything from the students, except maybe the students' effort at what they're teaching. But it's not like they need any favors. It's not like they need any special treatment. They do it out of compassion, out of that wish, out of love, a sincere kind of selfless love for people who want to alleviate their suffering. And that's their motivation for teaching and nothing else. And I'll tell you something that always struck me and stuck in my mind. Traditionally, I think this went all the way back to the Indian masters and their students. First of all, the student would go to the teacher and gather all the wealth they could. So I think the classical image is of a bag of gold dust, and they would go to the guru and present it to them for them to take them on as their student. And what do you suppose the guru did? They take the bag and just throw the dust into the air. Anyway, but after that, they would take the disciple on and pay for their food and take care of their food and their lodging. This is how it went in Tibet. The teacher is like almost like a parent to the student. They take you in, and it's like, all right, I guess I'll keep you alive too. And it's kind of amazing to think like that. So somebody willing to do that. Maybe it's different in our society. It's not really a cultural norm, but I'm pretty sure that in the traditional monasteries and things like that, that's how it goes. You go to them. A lot of people, I think, send their kids to the monastery because it's a way for them to get food and room and board and an education. Because a lot of these people are nomads, or now they're refugees in India. What kind of promise can they offer their children? So it's kind of anyway, I got off topic, but the teacher teaches out of love. All right, last one. Kyowapan, Kyowapang. And this means they should be beyond becoming discouraged. Literally, that's what it means. But what it is referring to specifically is they don't get tired of repeating themselves over and over for the students.
Can you say that again? Just joking.
No, that's an interesting one, because then you get those teachers who are like, I already told, or like in college or something, you can't just ask as many times as you want. I mean, maybe some professors who are really engaged with you, but if you're in those big lecture classes or whatever, it's kind of just like, if you don't catch it, you miss the boat, and nobody's really willing to take care of you, or to be like, oh, you didn't understand it? Like, let me help you, let me explain again. Or so they have patience. It's a kind of patience, right? And I think these all interrelate, but this is kind of part of being a skillful teacher, is recognizing that, like, not everybody gets it on first listen. A lot of this stuff is really deep. A lot of it's really complex. It requires a lot of contemplation and meditation. So the teacher understands that and will go on to to repeat that, to repeat themselves for the benefit of the students. Let me see what else. I think that's it. That's the 10 qualities. There are 10 there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, any questions? Yeah.
Is there like a such thing as like qualities of like a student who's kind of deserving to receive teachings from someone like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we had the three qualities of the cup, right, or the pot. Do you remember those? Mm-hmm. I'll repeat myself. So we have an open mind, right? So the pot's not turned over. Our ears and our minds are open to receive what we're being taught. We have a good motivation. It's not a dirty vessel, so to speak. It's not a dirty pot. So the motivation being to reach the highest goals for the benefit of everybody, not to sound cool or to spew out facts at people or to sound smarter than anybody else, or even for an academic understanding. A lot of us, I think, myself included, really value knowing stuff and having information. But really, information is nothing this kind of information is nothing if it's not integrated in some way, if it's not bringing about a change to our mind and our heart. That's the very purpose of this information, right? And the third one is that it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other, so we're able to retain it. Those are 3 qualities of a student. There are other qualities. I'm not sure if we get to them in this course, and I don't remember all of them, but I think those sum it up for now. One of them is having a kind of intelligence that, and I think if you're in this room, everybody has it, but a kind of intelligence that is attracted to this information, is thinking, I think there's something to be gained here, right? Because really, a lot of people, even people who were at the first class, are not here, right? And it's not any criticism to them, but it's very hard for this stuff to take root. And then even if there's some little kernel of interest there, it's hard for it to be strong enough that we would think it important enough to come every Wednesday night to the yoga house and sit through, talking. It's not always the most fun. It's not always super exciting, maybe seeming, but some part of us, all of us, feel like this is important enough to do. And I would say that's a quality, one prerequisite of a good student. And it's in a book somewhere, and I'm not very rich in scriptural knowledge right now, so I'll look for it. It's in here actually, but it's too dense to look for it right now, but I'll try to get it to you. Trying to remember other ones. I think those 3 are pretty good to start with.
I have another question. Do you think that like people who kind of self-proclaim them as teachers are not actually teachers in a way?
I think there's a danger in that. It's not necessarily true because, they might have something to say, but it depends what you mean by self-proclaimed. Like if they say I am a realized guru, like be my student, I would be very, very careful about that person. I heard Richard Freeman. You guys know Richard Freeman? He's the Ashtanga guy. Studied with Punjabi Joyce for a long time. He said, most people who really should be gurus wouldn't touch the job with a 10-foot pole. You know what I mean? Like they don't actually want to be a guru because they're humble. They're legitimately humble, and they might, even appear very ordinary. I can't make an across-the-board judgment about other teachers because you really can't know what a person's motivation is, and they might have something profound to say. That's good that you asked that, though, because this reminds me, I was at the end of the list, and I was thinking to myself, what else do I have to say? But it's really important that the teacher is not teaching some wrong idea, and that we can examine. I mean, using our best understanding, and I think everybody's got enough understanding to know that, for instance, saying, if you understand emptiness, your morality doesn't matter, your ethics doesn't matter. Run from that person, because that is a clear illustration of somebody who doesn't understand what it means to understand emptiness. And I forgot to say that for somebody who's realized emptiness, because if they won't answer you if you say, have you seen it? If they won't actually say that, and you have no other way of knowing, you can't read their mind or anything, what would be an example of somebody who understands emptiness? For one thing, they will say, you have to live an ethical life. And they will say, try to cultivate love for other people. Because if you understand reality, one of the realizations that comes out of that is recognizing the relationship between the fact that nothing is coming from out there at me, it's all coming from my mind. And what my mind is putting out there, what kind of movie my mind is projecting, is entirely based on how I've treated other people in the past. If I'm living in hell, I created the hell that I'm living in. If I'm living in a pure, enlightened world, that's going to be of our own making too. So understanding that and explaining that to students is a really good indicator that they at least have some knowledge of reality, right? And anybody who says different, you should be very careful. Check out teachers that you trust, that you've been with for a long time or that you know personally. Look how they act. Compare it to what you read in books. Compare it to what you hear the Dalai Lama say. Compare it to what you hear other teachers say. There's a famous story. Atisha, who was one of the first Indian masters to bring Buddhism to Tibet, was looking for a teacher who could teach him specifically about the compassion side of things. And there wasn't anybody in his close vicinity anymore who could teach them. And he heard about this guy in Sri Lanka, so he got on a ship for however long it took to get there. And in those days, that was really dangerous. He made this voyage all the way to Sri Lanka to find this teacher. And then he gets there, and rather than go straight to the teacher, what do you suppose he did to check the teacher out? He took, the story goes different ways. I just listened to this class again, the recording of it, and they were saying he took 6 months, but I've heard other teachers say he waited for 12 years before he even went to the teacher. He checked out their students. What is the product that comes out of that factory? How are they? Do they seem like they know something? Are they kind people? Do they have wisdom? Do they have understanding of the teachings? And are they somebody that you might want to emulate? You know, are they somebody that you can say, it looks like they got something from this guy, right? And then you might be inspired to go to the source and check them out. But yeah, you should. This is not something that, first of all, I just gave you a list, right? This is assuming that you wanted to pursue this path, and if you did, you're taking it very seriously, and then wanted to find a guru, somebody that you actually make the pact with, and somebody that is going to take you on. And it's a bond, it's a samaya, it's a covenant. It's like a sacred pact that you make with this person that until you reach enlightenment, they're going to guide you and they're going to take responsibility for that in you. So it's not something that you just say, hey, you want to be my teacher? A lot of times they don't even say yes. They'll ignore you, or they'll even tell you no, or they'll tell you to get lost. And it requires a certain level of conviction, right? And that comes from checking them out, and that comes from meditation, and from examining your heart, spending time with them, again, checking their students out, checking what they say with sources that you trust or other people that you trust. And then there's also this level, at least in my experience, of inspiration, where it's almost like it's a love. It's like a close feeling of love, and not a it's not like a romantic love or something, but a really sincere heart connection that you have with this person, a profound heart connection, like a loved one, like a close friend, a warmth. So those are all things that you can look for. Anybody else? I think we'll just keep it kind of open discussion, because you're reminding me of all the things that I forgot with the questions. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I know that you explained this in the last classes, but can you just give a little bit more of a brief description of what you mean by the emptiness?
Okay, yeah. Real quick, it's a deep subject, but I'll try to give an explanation. I'm just going to repeat myself, and I I know some of you have heard this example, but maybe a quality of a good student is they don't get bored when the teacher says the same thing over and over again. Okay, so we have this object, which we can all agree is a marker or a pen, right? We all see it the same way. And normally how we relate to these objects, and if we just quickly examine how we see it, it appears to us that it is a pen because it has some kind of pen quality that's coming out of it and radiating towards us. Almost like in science class, general science in high school, I remember this. When I started learning about emptiness, this came up. But they say, yeah, the object is out there, and then the light bounces off of it, and you see that the object is there. So it's the object that is there before the mind perceives it, right? That would be the thing that we normally think is here. But what if a dog comes in here and sees this same thing? In other words, does it see pen? Right? And the answer is no. Right? It would see something else, something to chew on. And who was it that sent me the picture? Was it you? Yeah, Dee sent me this picture. It was after that class of this gnarly chewed up pen that her dog had gotten and destroyed. It was like right after we did the whole thing. So perfect example. So what does that mean, and who cares? Right? Well, obviously, right? A dog is going to chew on this thing, and we see it as a marker. Maybe one question is, who's right? Who's right?
Is it a question of who's right, or is it really just not projecting yourself onto something because it's coming from you?
Right. I was just trying to keep it simple. Yeah, but exactly. But we relate to things as if they're objective. So if we might think about it for a second and say, well, neither are right, really. The dog's not wrong. It works like a chew toy, right? So therefore, it is a chew toy for the dog. But if you examine yourself, some part of our minds are going, but the dog's really wrong. I mean, come on. It was manufactured as a pen. It says Expo Pen on it. I use it. It writes. Right? If we're honest, the dog is foolish. The dog ruined a perfectly good marker. Look, you have ink all in your mouth now. Come on, it's not a chew toy. It was made as a pen. It is a pen, right? But the dog could equally validly say, what are you doing waving that thing around? I want to chew on it. Throw it. What are you doing just holding it, And the dog is having a perfectly valid and true experience. Now, if all the people left the room and we only brought in dogs, would it still be a pen? That's the question. What it means to say this pen is empty is to say, no, it is neither a pen or chew toy coming this way. It has no self-existent quality of being a pen or a chew toy from its own side. Okay? Here are some synonyms with that thing that we're trying to determine isn't there. Something that exists independently. Something that exists objectively. Something that exists by itself, through its own unique way of being. Something that exists by definition. Something that exists from its own side. All of those things are synonyms for the thing that we deny when we say this is empty. In other words, there is nothing like that here. What does that mean? Simple terms. It means pen is not coming this way. It's not saying, I'm a pen, I'm a pen, I'm a pen. Pen is coming this way. Really, what we're coming in contact with is some color, some shine, some writing here, some cylinder, right? Indicators of their perceptual indicators, a basis that our mind then smacks this label on. Hey, that looks like a pen, right? And then it becomes a pen. Through our conceptualizing as a pen and naming it, the pen comes into existence, okay? Now, why does one being see it one way and another being see it the other way? Can I just decide? Can I meditate on this as a stick of gold, right? And have it become that? If it's all my perception, is it as simple as deciding, okay, well, I'm just going to change how I perceive things. Is it as simple, is it as simple as deciding that alone? Because it's useful to decide, I want to change how I perceive things, right? But we have to know how it works. In other words, I can't just close my eyes and make this gold. We all know that's not true. It's like when you're a kid and something's bothering you and you're just like closing your eyes and saying, go away, or stop, just wishing for something to stop. It doesn't work. Because our mind, that perception of a pen, for instance, is forced on our mind. I can't decide to see this thing any other way. I can pretend, but still my mind is saying pen. Just like when I said, when we bring the dog in here, some part of our mind, if we really examine it closely, is saying the dog doesn't get it because it really is a pen. Right? It's forced. Let's use an easier example to describe why we see it this way. What if this is an irritating person? Or suppose you're let's just use this so we have a physical example. This is an irritating person, right? We encounter them, and when we encounter the irritating person, just like when we encounter the pen, it appears to us as if irritatingness, right, is coming across space, and it's just like smacking us. It's like getting into our ears and into our pores, and we become irritated. They make us irritated, right? As if they had some objective, inherent, self-existing nature, some kind of irritating self, something that we can point to within them that says, you are irritating. But then the next guy comes along, or say we're at the office and it's the boss, right? This is a good one, or an irritating business partner. The next guy might be like, finally, Michael's getting what he deserved, justice. Like I've been wanting to say the same thing to him for a long time, and they experience that same yelling or irritatingness as something to be happy about, or something that they're kind of psyched that that's going on. So it can't be in that person, because just like we said about the chew toy and the pen, somebody else is seeing it different. So why the two different perceptions? Why does one person experience those okay? Or maybe a better example is they go home at night and somebody loves them, right? We may hate them. We may feel like they're the worst, most despicable person ever, but somebody else loves them and embraces them when they get home at the end of the day. What's the difference between those two minds? This is where karma comes in, and this is why it's really important. I don't know that I've done a good job of explaining it the last couple times, so I'm going to reiterate again now. The reason, if this has no quality of being something from its own side, if the irritating person has no quality of being irritating from their own side, if it's coming from our mind, if we are projecting irritating, if it's coming this way, why? And how do we stop it? It's said that we had to have been irritating in the past. We had to have done something negative to somebody else in the past, something similar. And then it's that forms an imprint in our consciousness. Sometimes they call it a seed or a bakcha or a vasana in Sanskrit. It's like a little potentiality, almost like billiard balls, right? And those keep hitting into each other. The energy of that thing that we did, that perception, that imprint in our mind that we created, is just knocking into moments of consciousness through time until eventually the seed, so to speak, or the potential or the energy opens. It colors our experience, it creates our experience, and we're forced to see that thing as negative, whereas the other person has a different experience. If that's the case, right, if it's coming from us, from how we've treated somebody else in the past, and that's the only reason we're experiencing it that way, what do you suppose the best way to react in that situation is?
Passion.
Yeah. Don't do it back at the very least. Don't just light a fuse for a future bomb. You know what I mean? Stop it there. And most of us won't be able to have compassion at that moment. And don't beat yourself up. You have done a major victory if you can just. My teacher used to teach this asana, right? This special asana. He called it Mukha Bandha Asana. Bandha is like a lock, right? Mukha is mouth or face. So Bandha. And then you can do it within a fist if you want. Just shut your mouth and don't say anything, and you're doing like the highest Dharma practice. And those of you who have studied a little bit of the yoga tradition, this is one of the niyamas, right? Tapas, undertaking hardship for your spiritual practice. It's said that the highest form of tapas is patience, is not getting angry, not responding in kind when provoked. So, anyway, how to get off on that? Emptiness. You can think of it as things are coming from us and not at us. Why the word empty? Because they're empty of existing in any other way than coming from how we've treated others in the past.
Can you, like, the way, what that made me think of, and maybe you can, like, talk a little bit about it, is, like, at the same time as, like, on the other end of that, like, thinking about how people perceive you, like, realizing that, like someone's perception of you is because of it's like not inherent about you that if someone calls you something that you are that person, or like, but it's hard to separate from that if you like receive it a lot, and like it's like this merging of two people's karmas or something. But I don't know, like to realize that like whatever's coming from them and what they're perceiving at you is like not actually who you are. It's like their perception. I think it's like
yeah. Steve was talking about that.
Yeah. Both of these things are coming up in my life.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot recently.
Right. It's extremely relevant. And I was just going to say, isn't it, when we start to think about it, doesn't it start to become clear why there's so much emphasis on this, understanding this in this practice? Because it is the direct antidote to suffering. Understanding this will cut the root of the suffering cycle. That's what it said. Perfect example. And I feel like that's not even the deepest example, but imagine what a relief it would be not to feel like it's always true what somebody else says of us or thinks of us, or more powerful yet, what we think in our own mind about ourselves. You know, some of you have been to the yoga classes. Sometimes I do this meditation of try to think of who you are or what you are, right? And then recognize that it's always changing and that you can't actually pinpoint what you are because it's just a momentary perception. It's a momentary idea of yourself. What a relief it would be to know I'm not a bad person, or I'm not stupid, or I'm not inherently ineffective in the world, or I'm or I'm not beyond saving. I'm not beyond loving. We're empty of all of those things. How great! That means we're available to be anything. And at the deepest level, we're available to be a completely enlightened person. There is no quality of our mind that is inherently suffering. Our own mind is a projection. How we experience our own mind is a projection just as much as the pen. Right? It's thoughts, maybe a string of thoughts that we say, crappy suffering mind. We label crappy suffering mind, which is also a karma. We could create different karma that experienced our own mind as radiant, blissful, omniscient, loving mind of an enlightened being. You know what I mean? That's what this is saying. Because the mind isn't one way or the other from its own side. How do we achieve that? Do kindness. Live ethically. Live compassionately. Serve the world. Make it your life's objective to serve everybody you encounter. Treasure everybody like a jewel. There are teachings that say that, right? Everybody around us is the Buddha. Treat everybody like the Buddha. And you're creating that perception in your mind. You're creating that karma all the time. Because they're not. You say? I'm not saying everybody's secretly a Buddha, like you can unzip their body and then see little Buddha in there. It's just that they are not one way or the other way from their own side, right? Objectively. Think of the world, the entire environment, and everybody in it like a blank screen, and we're all walking around with a movie camera on our head. And the reel in that movie camera is our own reel that we've written, cast, directed, and we're turning the crank. And we're just walking around. And then what do? What is ignorance? Ignorance is saying, oh my God, there's a scary person. There's a scary person. And we're running away, right? As we're cranking the thing. Oh my God, there's an irritating person. Screw you. You know what I mean? Like, it seems so silly, right? Because that's what we're doing. And seeing the truth is like, oh, I have a camera in my head. You know, it's like, oh, I must have created all of this. You know, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to put a different movie up there. You never stop having the camera in your head, by the way. Even Buddhas, they have the camera, but they understand completely the camera. They understand how to work it. They understand how to create the movie that they want continuously, a never-ending reel of blissful experience. and of compassion and of love and wisdom, a boundless resource, a completely open mind.
Well, I think the biggest challenge in what you were saying is that it's a relinquishing of the ego at the end of the day, because you have to start to understand that you too are empty, right? So it's like there's no more I am, that you are none of the things, you are whatever you perceive you are in that moment, and also at the same time, just as validly, whoever is perceiving you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the most powerful things to meditate on your own emptiness. And we can talk about how to do that. It's not really the subject of tonight's class, but we will get to that. I think I said this, but the direct perception of emptiness that we keep talking about, it's not like you're sitting there meditating on a pen and being like, oh, finally I got it, the pen is empty. It's the direct experience of our own emptiness, what Dee said. So in that meditative state of concentration, you perceive the fact of what we just said, which is the I. When you say your name to yourself, the thing that, if you don't examine it, right, there should be something that comes up, just like the pen being a pen. Okay, the dog is stupid. Remember that pen that we all believe in secretly, but we're in a Buddhist class, so we don't want to admit it, right? The same thing with I. When you say I, when you say me, when you say your name to yourself, some picture and some belief and some feeling comes up in your mind of a me that's in here, like Captain Kirk driving the ship, the Michael ship, and he's looking out through the eyes which are like the windshield on the cosmos, and he's directing me, and he's having all these volitions, and he's saying raise your arm or whatever. It's the me that gets hurt. If you have a hard time figuring out what me that is, think of the last time somebody wrongly accused you of something. That me is really strong in that situation. You could do a meditation on it. What does he mean, that me that I think is there that's not really there? Does that mean we don't exist?
We just don't exist in the way we think we exist.
Exactly. Of course we exist. We're having a conversation. We're in a class. I'm talking. You're listening. You're having thoughts. You're listening to your own thoughts right now. You exist. If you pinch yourself, it'll hurt. Right? We're there. We're experiencing. Nobody's saying that I don't exist or you don't exist. It's a certain kind of I that we believe in that doesn't exist. We believe in a phantom, an I that we thought that was there that isn't there. Did I go too far?
I feel like it's like when you label yourself as something, like based on your belief system, like a Republican or a Democrat or a feminist or whatever, like when you say that word out loud, like you're saying those, like say I'm a Democrat, like I'm saying those words and like all of the things that I've learned to be the meaning of that word, but then when you say it out loud, every single person has their own perception of what that means. So like you're putting your own I-ness out into the world for some, in what you believe that you want to describe yourself as, only for other people to just like, it's almost like a ground for misunderstanding in a way, because you're not like, one word can't really describe the purity of the way that you meant it, like, because everyone has their own like interpretations of every single thing that you ever say, and everything, like same thing that when someone else says something, like you have your own perception of what they're saying. It's not necessarily the way, I don't know.
Exactly. Isn't it crazy how easy it is to suffer when that's the case? Worse, No, my God is the only God. My religion is the only way it is. You're seeing it wrong, and actually you deserve to die for that, No, seriously, it's like my book, your book should be burned, and my book is the right book. I'm a this, right? Behind that is I'm a this, and you're a that, right? And you are bad and wrong inherently, and I am right and good inherently, and all the wrong action of the world is based on this misunderstanding of thinking things exist from their own side. Should we take a break? You guys want to take a break? Yeah. Have some snacks, and then we'll come back in like 10 minutes. And if anybody wants to talk to me about their personal practice or ask any questions to me, you can, or talk amongst yourselves.